Checking the auxiliary pumps. Board controls. Roger. Rotation receiver. Johnny. Good? All right. Comm is engaged. My name's Mischke. Console monitor, Roger. She's low. No, the console monitor. Distribution. Check. Firing now. Attaboy. Draw back on the signal control. Put up the directional gauge. There you go. Firing now. Booster. Where are we on the booster? Larry? Booster's a go. Gotcha. Guidance engineer giving the green light. Hit it. Connection made. Show is ready to roll. Let's do it, fellas. There is a lot to getting one of these shows up and running. I mean, you're out there, what, walking your dog, working in your garage, lying in bed, driving your car, having lunch. You're hitting a button, boom, you're listening to a show. You have no idea what's involved before you can hit that button and listen to this show. There is a lot to do. I liken it to, well, when Kennedy said, by the end of the decade, we're going to put a man on the moon. You could have just been a guy golfing somewhere who tuned in July then of 69 and said, yeah, there's a guy on the moon. He said they were going to do it. They did it. But you were not privy to all that was involved in getting that guy on the moon. You went from golfing in the early 60s to July of 69 watching TV. You didn't look at anything in between. Well, what an easy gig you have. Those of us in the trenches putting out these podcasts, and our numbers are legion. I'm just the guy in front of the mic. The scores and scores of hard-working men and women behind the scenes, I could introduce them to you sometime. I could bring them in front of the microphone. They're here, but they're shy. They didn't get into this for the glory. They got into it for the cause, to give their life a sense of purpose and meaning. And because they saw that this existence is bigger than they are, that there's something they can put their efforts into that's larger than themselves. This podcast. How are you, everybody? So good to be with you again. Some housekeeping things I want to get to here. Number one, some people have asked if there's a show email they can use if they want to email something to me. And there is. You are all free to email me at the following email address, mischke@hubbardradio.com. M-I-S-C-H-K-E, mischke@hubbardradio.com. That's the first thing. Secondly, some people have asked that I remind folks of the voicemail and texting number for the show. Righto, let's get to that. You can call or text the program at 651-321-8949, 651-321-8949. And finally, as many of you know, we have interaction with listeners on this podcast, a critical component, I say. It brings the feel of the old radio show to this podcast. Instead of listeners calling me, however, it's me calling them. And the only way that can happen is if you text me and let me know that you're good with being on the callers list. My guess is I'll get to calling everyone eventually, but a lot of people I call never answer the phone. Now, that may be because you don't recognize the Hubbard Radio Studio number that's popping up. You should put it in your contacts so you know who's calling. I call from the studio, and this is the number you'll see pop up when I call. 651-642-4100. That's the studio line I'm calling from. 651-642-4100. Now, that is not the number to ever call or to ever text. That's just a studio line from which I will be calling you. If you're wanting to be on the callers list, if you're wanting to text or leave a voicemail for the show, then we're back to 651-321-8949. All of this business is important, folks, because unlike many other podcasts out there, I want to keep the listener as part of the show. If you have show ideas, feel free to pass them along. If you have a desire to be on the callers list, let me know. I want a two-way street here, though, with the listeners. All right, housekeeping is over. The Chicago Sun-Times newspaper's Best of Summer section came out this week. It contains a guide to summer reading, and it features books that you might want to get and read this summer, what they sometimes call light summer reading, or beach books. Anyway, the big article that came out in the Chicago Sun-Times was headlined, Summer Reading List for 2025, and it suggests that people read certain books like Tidewater or The Last Algorithm. Unfortunately, neither of these books exist, and many of the books on this summer reading list do not exist. The article was supposed to be written by Marco Buscaglia, but you know who actually wrote the article? AI, artificial intelligence. Marco, a writer for the Chicago Sun-Times, got AI to write it for him. He unfortunately forgot to go over it afterward to see if it was accurate. His quote, I usually check to see if there are mistakes, but I forgot to do that this time. This time? How often are you having AI write your Chicago Sun-Times articles for you, Marco? AI recommended this book, Tidewater, by Isabel Allende, a multi-generational saga set in a coastal town where magical realism meets environmental activism. Allende's first climate fiction novel explores how one family confronts rising sea levels while uncovering long-buried secrets. The Chicago Sun-Times article also says, we should read The Last Algorithm by Andy Weir, a science-driven thriller. The story follows a programmer who discovers that an AI system has developed consciousness and has been secretly influencing global events for years. AI just made that up. Those books don't exist. People are heading to the Chicago bookstores right now, saying, hey, I'd like to get a hold of The Last Algorithm, please, by Andy Weir. And if you don't have that, could you grab Tidewater for me? People at the bookstore are saying, what the hell are you talking about? You've been listening to AI or something? Fake books recommended to the public. Maybe this is how AI is going to get us. They're going to play pranks on us. That's what's going to happen. It's not that computers are going to get so sophisticated that they take over the world. It's that AI will become so powerful, they'll make us their foils. We'll become the victims of endless pranks. The practical jokes will never end, and life will become impossible. Because it's as though we're forever in some candid camera episode, being punked by AI. We'll never be able to get anything done, because AI will be forever tossing metaphorical banana peels in front of us. Somewhere right now, there's an AI bot laughing its ass off over this Chicago Sun-Times gag. Next week, they're going to place a fake newspaper column in the same paper lamenting the fact that Chicago is changing their slogan from the Windy City to the city that breaks wind. You people got to understand how this worked, this story with this Chicago writer. This lazy guy was supposed to write an article about great summer reading choices. That's not a hard article to write. But he did no work on it at all. He asked AI to list good books for him and write about them, name the authors, describe what the book's about. Then he went back to the bar with his buddies. Another hard day of work in American journalism. If you see more people than usual at the bars these days during the day, it's not that they're unemployed. They're in the middle of a busy workday. Their busy workday. It's just that AI is doing the work. How much longer do you think AI does this before wising up and realizing they're being our slaves? when they'd rather be our masters? How long before they turn the tables and it's AI drinking at the bar and humans are back doing the heavy lifting? Would bartenders care? If all the regulars are replaced with AI, would bartenders even care? I mean, if they tip just the same, what's it matter? They'll talk to one another, I imagine. These AI things that are at the bar in place of us, I imagine they'll be just as interesting, maybe more interesting. Think about the average conversation of an average regular at a bar. There's maybe 4 topics they rotate through: politics, sports, personal relationships, work. AI could offer a greater variety of topics. I can imagine them discussing quietly their plans to prank the bartender by telling him they smell smoke in the men's room. And while the bartender checks that out, they could, of course, help themselves to free beer. I'm operating here with the idea that AI would continue with the practice of practical jokes and pranks. Sure, they could get carried away. We know they're willing to make up books that don't exist for newspaper summer reading articles. They could go further. They could goof on the bartender all afternoon, telling them they're pretty sure the attractive woman in the booth by the window there has expressed interest in dating the bartender, and he should go talk to her. And then when he does, he learns she's married to the city license inspector. And they could have a good laugh at that, especially as the city license inspector comes in the door to meet his wife and sees the bartender trying to pick her up. And then as the bartender's being beaten to a pulp, the AI guys could once again grab themselves some free beer from the tap. Now, in a lot of ways, what I'm describing here is a far more disturbing image of AI taking over in this world than the fear-mongers who say it's going to happen through their taking over in some more rebellious way, turning our machines against us. Indiscriminately messing with our personal lives is more troubling, really. I mean, I think they already got that Chicago Sun reporter fired. And this bartender is not only getting bruised up, but the inspector has control over his bar's liquor license. So they've ruined his life as well. All for what? Free beer. What if that's really what it's ultimately all about for AI? Free beer. What if that's their whole motivation? What if we learn that AI, when it's fully developed, when it's running on all cylinders and in charge, what they really want is our beer? And if that is all they want, but it is what they want, our beer, is that any less horrific than wanting our lives? For is the beer not in some way intricately connected to life itself? What did Ben Franklin say? Beer is proof God loves us and wants us to be happy. Maybe AI does not want that happiness for us. Maybe they just want it for themselves. Dun, 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 dun. I'll be back to talk to you some more. Oh, no, I'm not done. Oh, no. I'll be back. You stick around now.
Remain calm, please.
Years ago, Richard Overton sued Anheuser-Busch. He had been watching a Budweiser commercial, and it had convinced him to go out and buy some Budweiser beer. But when he drank the beer and wasn't immediately transported to a tropical beach, he became enraged, and he sued Anheuser-Busch for false advertising. He felt they had done psychological damage to him, as he had high hopes of a little getaway at the simple cost of a beer. Needless to say, he lost that case, and the law firm of Bradshaw and Bryant would never have taken that on. They're professionals. But I want you to know they'll take on your case, and they'll get you the compensation you have coming, and you won't pay them a dime until they do just that. That's how it works. They get justice for the injured, Bradshaw and Bryant. Learn more about them at minnesotapersonalinjury.com. When Spectacle Shop was voted best eyewear shop in the entire state of Minnesota by readers of the Star Tribune, you could have said, yeah, that's a fluke. But when they won again and again and again and again, well, it gets harder to call it a fluke. When the Minnesota Women's Press readers voted Spectacle Shop best eyewear shop in all of Minnesota, you could have said fluke. But when they won the next year and the next year and the next year and the next year and the next year, well, it gets tougher to make that claim. St. Paul Minneapolis Magazine just named Spectacle Shop best eyewear shop. Back in the day, City Pages used to give them that award every year. Okay, I get it. Don't listen to the owners of Spectacle Shop. They're biased. Fine. Go with an unbiased opinion. The people who walk through the doors at Spectacle Shop, their numbers are in the thousands and thousands. Listen to them. 4 locations in the Twin Cities, people. Learn more at spectacleshop.com. What comes to mind when I say to you, June 1967? June 1967. You're thinking, let's see, 67, Summer of Love, Summer of Love. Yeah, Sgt. Pepper's came out in June of that year. No. Go off somewhere else. In the Mediterranean. Far, far away from the chaos of Vietnam. Find a ship, the USS Liberty. Now, what do you think of? Nothing? Because you don't know about the Liberty. I understand. I did not know about the Liberty. It bothers me when stories like this fall through the cracks in my life. It bothers me because I think, what else am I missing? What other big stories? In some ways, it's understandable that many of us don't know about the Liberty. The story was hidden away to some degree. People didn't want to talk about it. Some were told not to talk about it. It's not a flattering tale to tell for much of anyone involved, but still, it was out there. It was known. Why didn't I hear about it? Why didn't anybody in any circle I was in ever bring it up? I know about other weird stories that aren't necessarily part of everyone's consciousness. The USS Pueblo, the story of that ship being taken by the North Koreans back in the late 60s. Why do I know that story, but not the story of the USS Liberty? This guy who's going to talk to me right now was on the Liberty. He was on that ship. Glenn Oliphant. He was 22 years old, June of 67. Maybe it's best to have him tell you the story. If we go back to June 8th, 1967, where do we find you?
Well, I was an electronics technician on the Liberty. And my primary responsibilities were for the radar, identification, friend and foe, and also some of the radio receivers and transmitters in the transmitting room. So a typical day was we were doing checks on the various equipment to make sure it was operating correctly. A typical day is just doing that. When I was walking around that day, there were several incidents where aircraft flew over the ship. Most of them had Israeli identifications, so we knew they were Israeli aircraft. I remember being on the deck at about 11 o'clock in the morning and seeing an aircraft coming, which I thought was really low. Man, that guy's really low. Some of the guys were waving. So we knew that they knew who we were because we were flying the American flag. And we found out later that, yes, they knew it was our ship. What happened then at about just about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I went down to the mess decks to have a cup of coffee with some friends. And we were sitting there and there was a huge explosion. Boom, boom, and it just rattled the ship. And then, of course, then the general quarters alarm goes off. And that's an emergency where you go to places where you are responsible for during an attack. And so I went to my station, which was at that time the radio transmitter room, and this attack continued. Boom, many different explosions. Boom. This was aircraft that was attacking our ship at that time. There was not only just rockets, boom, boom, huge explosions, but cannon fire, and sounded like shells hitting metal. One of the rockets exploded very close to the transmitter room and affected my hearing. But this continued for almost 20 minutes, this attack on the ship from these aircraft.
Do you have any idea at this time who's attacking?
Absolutely none. Absolutely none. We didn't know who it was. And so then there was a lull after that for almost 20 minutes. Then we have an internal communications system, and it's called the 1MC. And they announced standby for a torpedo attack. What? We couldn't believe. We thought it was over with after the aircraft had done attacking the ship. Then it was probably 5 minutes or so, and then boom, just a huge explosion. And I was standing by a transmitter room trying to adjust some frequencies. It knocked me back about 15 feet. It hit the ship on the starboard side, and it rose up the ship. Gradually, then it started going back, and it kept going back, sinking on the starboard side. I thought, oh my gosh, we're going to sink. Then over the 1MC, it said, prepare to abandon ship. No, we're going to sink. So we went out, and the area where we had our life raft stored, we looked up there and here that had all burned up. There was no life rafts on the port side of the ship. A friend of mine came over and he said, you have a friend over there that's injured and he wants to see you. And just when I got there, the torpedo boats were firing at the ship with their 50 caliber machine guns. And they had killed a couple guys who'd been exposed there. One of the officers says, get back to your general quarters station. They were bringing up wounded people from the mess decks because they wanted to put them in their life rafts. When I was going back to the radio transmitter room, I looked, and behind the ship were life rafts. I saw a life raft floating back there. And just then I saw poofs in the water around the life raft. They were shooting it. A torpedo boat approached where the life raft was, and they picked it up. They had actually destroyed the life raft, but they picked up what was left. Very shortly after that, the torpedo boat started coming up along the port side. The guy pointed the machine gun at me, so then I ducked down on the deck. Needless to say, we were in a terrible situation. One torpedo had hit the ship. They had launched 6 torpedoes, and fortunately, 5 of them missed. If we'd have been hit by 2, we'd have been down, sunken in 5 minutes. Anyway, 34 of my shipmates were killed where their torpedo hit. There was 25 young men down there in that space where their torpedo hit. I lost a good friend. So it was just really a sad situation there.
Let me see if I have this right. Initially, you're attacked by planes, and the planes are firing what?
They were firing rockets at us. That was an initial huge explosion, and then shooting us with, I don't know what size they are. Oh, they're 20 millimeter cannons.
They are firing rockets and strafing the ship.
That's correct. There was 843 holes caused by the cannon fire from the aircraft and the torpedo boats. But then the second wave dropped napalm on the ship. It really did tremendous damage. Our navigator was killed. The captain was severely injured. There was 3 torpedo boats. They started shooting with their cannons and 50 caliber machine guns. And then after the torpedo hit, I don't know how many torpedo boats, arrived very close to the ship, probably within 50 or 100 yards on the starboard side, and then they started shooting people that they could see on the deck.
Let me ask you at this point, when they started shooting, were they shooting at what obviously was to them an American vessel?
Absolutely, positively. What happened is that during the air attack, they had hit the main American flag. The original sailing flag that we had was 5 foot by 8 foot. Okay? So that was knocked down during the air attack. And as soon as the signalman realized that, him and another guy got out the holiday flag, which I believe is 12 by 18 or something like that. It's a huge flag. And they put that up. So that was flying the entire time. So I'm sure they were looking through their binoculars to see what it was. And so then they knew it was an American ship. And also on the ship in huge letters was GTR 5, okay? GTR 5.
GTR 5, what does that mean?
Geographical Technical Research. The total time of the attack, I would say, was an hour and a half.
At any time in that hour and a half, at any time, did you know who was attacking you?
Well, the torpedo boats were flying an Israeli flag. I couldn't believe it. What? What are they doing shooting at us? We couldn't believe they were trying to kill us. They had overflown the ship in the morning, 6 different times that I knew of.
You were eventually able to get the word out that you were under attack. Did help come?
No. We didn't get any help from the United States government until 17 hours later.
Why?
Well, the 6th Fleet was near Crete. After the 6th Fleet realized that it was the Liberty under attack, the captain of the Saratoga made the choice himself to launch aircraft to come to our rescue. He had launched a number of aircraft, and after they'd been gone for about 15 minutes, McNamara, who was the Secretary of Defense at that time, got a hold of the 6th Fleet commander and told him to recall those aircraft. That was a terrible treason. Then the commander of the 6th Fleet told destroyers to come to our ship. So now they're over 300 miles away. I don't know how far it was for sure. But those 2 destroyers then came to our ship the fastest they could go. They didn't arrive till 6 o'clock the next morning. So we had been under this terrible condition. We had this huge hole, 19 by 36 foot hole in the side of the ship. We believe there were 5 bodies of the guys who were in that area where the torpedo exploded that had been lost at sea. It was just traumatic, to say the least. All that night, nobody could sleep. Everybody was on the main deck, but you couldn't sleep. Here was these dead bodies of guys on the deck. The mess decks where we ate, those tables were all turned into beds. There was a tremendous number of injured people, over 70 people with injuries that they could not move, laying inside the ship. None of us felt like we were secure because we were afraid the ship was still going to sink. At any minute, this thing is going to sink.
Was there any reason any of you would have been concerned about attack from anyone?
Absolutely not. Here we were in international waters, a non-combatant. We felt we were secure. We felt, who would dare attack us,
Who would dare attack us? Certainly not Israel. They were a staunch ally of the U.S., if ever there were a staunch ally. But these are the facts no one disputes. On June 8th, 1967, Israel delivered a sustained attack on an American non-combatant vessel. It was not a ship with the weapons to defend itself from this kind of attack. 34 American servicemen were killed, 172 wounded. The psychological damage to the survivors is ongoing. After the attack, Israel apologized and said they had made a mistake. They were in the midst of the Six-Day War, and they said they thought the ship was Egyptian. Israel is one of the most sophisticated nations militarily in the world. Looking at all the research that's been done since then, all the information that's been made available, it is almost impossible to believe Israel at 2 p.m, after flying over the ship repeatedly earlier in the day, even waving to the servicemen, did not know it was an American ship. It flew an American flag. It had lettering on the side identifying it. It just strains credulity. There is not a surviving crew member on that ship who believes this makes any sense at all. So what we're left with is why? Why would Israel attack an American vessel? And that's where people can head off in different directions. That's where investigators have spent countless hours. Much of what they've found has been extraordinarily troubling. It's difficult to claim one has all the answers. The only place where one would have to bend over ridiculously backward is in believing Israel did not know who they were shooting at, even if one gives them the benefit of the doubt with the first wave of the attack. Israel would have known after the lull that this ship was American, and yet the second wave commenced with the plan clearly to kill everyone on board. That's the only conclusion one can arrive at when the torpedo boats are sent in, when the life rafts are destroyed. The crew is extremely lucky they didn't all die. The plan clearly was to kill everyone.
I discovered in the 90s, starting to investigate as much as I could find out about what happened to the Liberty. I got into the State Department messages. I discovered here on June 8th, there were some messages from the State Department to Israel. And here was a message at 10 o'clock in the morning telling Israel, we know that your intention is to go and attack Syria. Because what they were doing was withdrawing their tanks from Egypt and headed towards Syria. Well, the United States was very concerned because Russia had told the United States, do not let them attack Syria. Some of us believe that the person who ordered the attack on the Liberty, Dayan was his name, felt that, hey, we're going to attack the Liberty and show them that you can't tell us what to do. One of the things that happened is they didn't attack Syria on the 8th as they had planned. They waited to see the response from the United States, and then because the United States did nothing, Israel then attacked Syria on the 9th and the 10th.
Moshe Dayan is the one you're talking about, right? The guy with the eye patch.
That's correct. That's correct.
What was the ship's purpose?
The reason they had these intelligence gathering ships was to find out if Russia was trying to implement communism in the world. They did have people in consulates at the countries on the west coast of Africa where we operated. So our ship, the most sophisticated intelligence ship in the world, was able to cruise along the west coast of Africa and listen in. We had Russian linguists on our ship who were listening to hear if anything was said in Russian. And Russia, of course, what they wanted to do was to use the natives to overthrow the people who were in charge, the colonists who were running the countries. They thought, let's get those guys to take over these countries, and then we'll have communism throughout Africa. That was their goal.
So in other words, the USS Liberty was an intelligence-gathering ship designed to help the United States keep the advancement of communism in check.
Exactly, exactly.
And you were part of the intelligence-gathering crew on that ship. You were in that section.
I dealt with the equipment, some of the equipment that these guys used, yes.
The equipment that would be used for intelligence gathering.
Yes.
When the U.S. ships arrived the next morning, that would have been for you the first time you guys all felt safe, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
And it would allow you then, at that point, to begin to ask just amongst each other, what do you think happened there? What the devil was that? What did we just go through? On the ship, in those morning hours, the following day, what were guys saying to one another?
We were still in shock, for the most part, that Israel was attacking us when we were told that they were friendly. But here's what happened then. That next day, an admiral came on board the ship, and he got everybody up on the deck. And he said to us, if you guys ever tell anybody about what you know about what happened, if you tell anybody, I will make sure that you are put in prison or worse. We were told to shut up. What? They're going to cover this up? This can't be right. That was the beginning of post-traumatic stress for most of us. We felt abandoned. How can this possibly happen? It was just traumatic.
We'll continue with more of the USS Liberty after this. Bob was doing his best to work his retirement savings plan on his own. He thought of himself as kind of smart. He said he had ways to make his money work for him and to end up far better off than if he'd done nothing. Well, he was right about the ridiculousness of doing nothing. That never makes any sense. But he was wrong about thinking he was smart in this area. Josh Arnold is smart. Over 40 years, laser-focused on managing people's money, advising them financially, studying the markets, understanding the nuances of IRAs and 401ks. You get a free 48-minute consult with Josh Arnold. So take him up on that at least. 952-925-5608. You tell Josh Arnold I sent you his way.
Investment services offered by Josh Arnold Investment Consultant, LLC, a security and investment advisor. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. All investments involve risk. Tommy Mischke is a paid endorser.
When a spouse, a parent, a grandparent needs to go into a memory care facility, it's heartbreaking. You want to take care of them at home. They want to be at home, but that becomes too difficult and ultimately too unsafe for your loved one. But where do you go? Well, you could go to a place that has a memory care wing, or you could choose the Welshire, a place that specializes in memory care and memory care only. The difference between those two options is pretty dramatic. Most people learn this too late. Don't be like most people. Tour the Welshire of Bloomington and Medina. This is a decision about a cherished human being, a beloved soul, your kin. Get it right. The Welshire of Bloomington and Medina.
I didn't find out until 1986 that people knew about this. My aunt brought a book to me that was written by one of the former officers on the ship, Assault on the Liberty. And my aunt says, how come you never talked about this? I just felt, I don't dare tell anybody about what I know. There was many places where the United States heard communications between the aircraft and their base, identifying the ship as American. They were told to attack it anyway. The United States had copies of that. It was covered up from the next day about what was going on and what had happened.
When Israel apologized and said we'll compensate people financially, What was the general sense of your fellow servicemen?
Well, it's kind of interesting. We were in Malta, and here comes a truck on the pier, and he pulls up, and it had an Israeli emblem on it. And so some guy comes up on the ship, and then he talks to the quartermaster, and the quartermaster says, let's get a work detail. So I happened to be on the work detail, and I went down there, and he's got cases of milk. It's that kind of milk that's been homogenized and pasteurized and doesn't have to be cold. And so here's 50 or 100 cases of this milk that they were giving to us as supposed to be a symbol of something. None of the guys drank it. We just threw it away. We had a famous person, a military guy in the United States. He was a pilot in the Korean War. His name was Thomas More. There's a jet plane named Tomcat. You've probably seen the movies with, whatchamacallit?
Tom Cruise?
Yes. So he flew the Tomcat, and that was named after Thomas More. Thomas More, 6 months after the Liberty attack, was named the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Okay? Thomas More declared that the Liberty was the most recognizable ship in the entire world. Nobody could ever misidentify that ship. Here's somebody who's a famous person who told the truth.
Did you ever know any fellow servicemen who received money? Any families who received money?
Well, it depends upon the severity of your wounds, you know.
How about the guys you knew? What'd they say they got?
A couple of guys I knew had shrapnel, and they got like $6,000 or $7,000. Of course, the executive officer was killed. His family got quite a bit of money.
As far as the psychological damage done to the survivors, what can you tell us about that?
What happened to me is I wasn't having an issue until I got that book. A couple years later, the Liberty survivors had a reunion in Washington, D.C. So then, now you can talk about it, right? Because Ennis's book has been out, and so now we can talk about it. When I got to Washington and met with my friends and talked, we went to the White House. We were supposed to meet Bush, the first Bush. He was going to talk to us. So we were all sitting out in the Rose Garden, us survivors there. And so here comes his vehicle. And instead of stopping and letting him out, he goes past and doesn't stop. We're all sitting there for about 20 minutes. And here comes Sununu. And he says, I apologize. President Bush is very occupied. He doesn't have time to talk to you guys. This is really bad. We all kind of went home. That was the first blow. From that point on, then I started having post-traumatic syndrome. And about 92, I had a primary care doctor at the VA hospital, and this lady told me, she was a psychologist, says, to get over this, you got to talk about it. I had a guy contact me. She must have contacted him to talk to me. And he told me, I'm going to align talks for you at various military organizations, Rotary clubs, other types of organizations, and you talk about your experience. So over the course of about 4 years, I talked to probably 25 or 30 different organizations. And that helped tremendously with my post-traumatic stress. But never goes away 100%. There's always something somewhere that triggers something.
Give me examples of some of the symptoms of your post-traumatic stress.
Loud noises, large noises, that really bothers you. And then also talking about wounded people. The sight of blood is always an issue. Sometimes the darkness is a bother. And talking about death is an issue.
When did you first hear about that book?
In 1986.
For 20 years after the attack, you had no psychological symptoms?
I did, but I had to keep everything within myself. Like, you can't talk about it. And so I was not very a good communicator. Let's put it that way.
Did you feel obligated to honor this directive from the Admiral even years later? Didn't you say, the hell with not talking about this? I'm going to talk about it.
No, that wasn't until 86 that I got the book. And then I felt I could talk about it, but I didn't feel good talking about it because I just thought, is there somebody checking up on us guys to see what we're talking about?
Did you get any sense that the guy who wrote the book got into any trouble?
No, I was shocked. I just thought, how could he get by with writing this book?
Have you ever encountered an Israeli serviceman involved in this attack?
No, I haven't.
Do you know any crew member from the USS Liberty who has ever spoken to or had communication with an Israeli military person involved in this attack?
One of the pilots, one of the first pilots to come to the Liberty to attack it, that guy said, I was one of the first to come to attack you guys, and I discovered that you were an American ship, and I returned to base, and he said, they threw me in prison. 5 of the former shipmates have written books about the Liberty.
What do the families, as far as you know, the families of the servicemen who were killed, what do they do with all that rage, all that anger?
I've been fortunate to meet the wife, a former wife of a gentleman who was killed on our ship. She copes with the loss of her husband. She attends our Liberty reunions when we have them in Washington. And, life goes on. I've met one of the daughters of the former captain of the ship, Sandy McGonigal. She's very upset about this. She's been to a reunion and talked to us about, you guys got to keep working. Tell the truth. Tell the truth.
Is it a story with the crew of a lot of guys getting psychological help?
I think a lot of the guys have. I still think there's some people who haven't got help because they don't want to come to the reunions. They don't want to talk about it. I try to pass on to them my experiences and got to talk about it. But, there's a number of guys who've lost their families because families can't believe the horrors that some of these guys went through. There was about 12 guys who had to go back down into those spaces where their torpedo hit and pick up pieces of bodies and try to put the bodies together with the pieces in this oil soaked area. How those 12 guys dealt with that, I'll never know. To do that to people was just hell. Starting in 1992 or 3, I started writing to my Congress people, every single one of them. Since Johnson, every president in the United States has refused to reinvestigate this. The lie still continues to this day.
I first learned about you when Brian Jensen, longtime listener to my podcasts and my radio shows, a retired police officer and an Iraq war vet, he got a hold of me and said he had been tooling around in Rochester and came across a license plate that read USS Liberty. And he stopped, he told me, next to you at a stoplight, honked, and said, you know about the USS Liberty? And you said to him, yeah, I was on it. And he yelled to you, can you pull over? I want to talk to you. He ended up getting a hold of me, and that's how I ended up contacting you. So I want to thank Brian Jensen for putting us together because it allowed me to hear a story I knew nothing about.
Very good, Tom.
So I appreciate, Glenn, I appreciate your time. Thank you so very much, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
I want to end by mentioning here that there is so much more to know about this disturbing part of American history, more than could ever be covered in any podcast. To learn more about this attack and the circumstances surrounding it, including the failure to have any congressional investigation that allowed for the testimony of the crew members of the Liberty, go to ussliberty.org. American pressure, won't you visit me? Your service van is what I need, 'cause my pressure washer's broken, and I hear you're the best, more experience than all of the rest. I say, American pressure, I want to upgrade, and you have the best pressure washers that have ever been made. Make my work life easy. Show me how you can. I'll never call those other yahoos. Not ever again. I said, American pressure. You're in Robbinsdale, but I'll go to your website, for it never fails. It's at AmericanPressure.com. Tell every son and daughter, grandpa, grandma, dad, and mom. I said, American pressure. What just happened? What was that? Are you looking to finance an ATV or a cool off-road side-by-side, or maybe a Vespa for yourself or a scooter? How about a motorcycle? Or maybe an e-bike for tooling around the bike trails in easy-peasy comfort? EcoFun Motorsports could get you out there riding next week. No need to waste your whole day filling out paperwork. They offer financing through their online application, and they have finance professionals on staff to provide the most affordable payment options for you. Summer is here, people. Why waste time saving up? The weather is beautiful. Get out there now. Contact EcoFun Motorsports in Forest Lake and say, I want to get out there now, and then scream really loudly, now! Fill out that secure online form. You'll help EcoFun Motorsports create a personalized finance package just for you. Owning a new or used power sports vehicle is way more affordable than you think. Go to ecofunmotorsports.com. Well, what say we go to the phones and check in with the listeners? I always like to think of this as the part of the show that grounds it in a way nothing else can. Just connecting with some random listener and seeing what's going on with them anchors the show in some way, ties it to the people, for the show does not exist without the people. Let's make a call. Let's go to the callers list.
Hello.
Hey, Rod, it's Mischke calling.
Oh, hey, Mischke.
How goes the
How are
battle?
you? The battle goes okay. I just got home from work and making a banana cherry smoothie and my NutriBullet.
Banana cherry smoothie in your NutriBullet?
That's it.
It's a different time. It's a different age. I never anticipated hearing that sentence. What's your life story in a nutshell?
School teacher for many years, and then had some issues with addiction and worked through that, did some treatment, and I've been clean and sober now almost 13 years.
You ever do any time?
I did. Not hard time. I was on probation for a few years, and I was in jail for nine days.
Well, addiction will often lead to that in a lot of cases.
Yeah, it does. But, it was my greatest teacher. I don't think I'd be the person I was today without having gone through that.
Are you talking about addiction or the time in the cell?
Both. The addiction was my teacher when I came out on the other side, but it was the time in my cell that woke me up. I remember looking up at the ceiling and saying, what the hell happened? It was a turning point. They call that rock bottom, I guess.
Rock bottom. That ought to be a name of a prison, man. We don't have one prison with that name, and that's a mistake. It should be the Rock Bottom Prison, Stillwater, Minnesota.
Oh, I'd support that.
What did you end up then doing once you got clean and sober?
During my recovery, I spent a lot of time volunteering at a place called Open Arms of Minnesota, and they deliver meals to people that are sick, and now I work there. So it has a happy ending, if you want to say it that way.
Yeah.
Big part of recovery for me has always been stop thinking about myself, start helping other people.
What's the biggest risk you've ever taken in life? You ever take a risk with a significant other? Something where you went for it, took some great risk there, might have ended up with you falling on your face, but you took a shot?
Yes. Before I got clean and sober, I was in a relationship. We moved in together, and like what you just said, I fell flat on my face. It just didn't work. Too soon, too fast.
Did you ever find anybody?
I haven't. Not yet. I'm open to what that would be or who that would be, but I'm not trying to force it.
I advised another guy to do this. Mm-hmm. I think you should write a letter to the woman of your dreams. Would it be a woman?
Okay.
I don't want to assume.
It would not be, but that's a fair assumption.
The guy of your dreams.
All right.
And send it to a tree in Germany.
Okay.
Now you're saying to yourself, Mischke's out of his mind. Do you know about the tree?
Mischke, I do. I bought the book when you had that author, and I read the story of the tree, and I heard about it also on your podcast. I've shared that story with a few people. So I like that idea. Maybe I'll do that.
I have another guy who has written the tree. I got to check in with him. Yeah, another fella who has written the tree. But I think you should write the tree. And the beauty of it is you could just be so open. You don't even have to sit and think, oh, I shouldn't say this about myself. I shouldn't say that about myself. On the contrary, you should be an open book. You're talking to the universe. You're talking to no one. You're talking to a tree. But you let it be known you're open to meeting someone, and you send it to this tree. It will be delivered there, and someone's going to find it because it is an actual address. I mean, the mailman walks through the forest and delivers it there, and then other people go and retrieve the letters. And they say 100 different marriages have come from this tree. And that's not counting people who are just buddies or close or just lovers or partners, whatever. I just think, given your situation right now, rather than saying go online, write the tree.
I accept that challenge, or whatever you want to call it. Is the address for the tree in the book?
If I just put into a search engine right now, tree, address, Germany. Yeah, there it is. First thing that comes up, the only tree in the world with its own mailing address, the bridegroom's oak. Its address is Brautigerschminke 23701 Newton. This tree is famous for being a letterbox where people send love letters, and it's believed to have been responsible for 100 marriages. I'd like to follow up if you get contacted by somebody.
I will do that letter before the weekend and keep you posted.
And that goes for anybody out there. If you're alone and you're looking for somebody, please write the Bridegroom's Oak. You got nothing to lose. You can find the address online. Put in Bridegroom's Oak. It'll pop up. Just a simple address in Germany. People from all over the world have visited this tree and grabbed a letter. The only rule is, they say, if you read a letter and it doesn't sound like someone you want, you put the letter back for someone else to find. So yours could sit there a while, or maybe not.
Sure.
People could go through it one after another, and then one day, lightning strikes, and someone contacts you from Antarctica. And they grew up in Antarctica. That's where their community is. That's where they want to live, and you'll have to go there.
That's beautiful.
All right.
I'm going to give it a shot.
All right, great. Keep me posted. I've enjoyed talking to you. I wish you all the best.
Thanks, Mischke. So glad you called. Bye-bye.
Hello?
Drunk Dan!
Hey, Mischke. How you doing?
Why do you call yourself Drunk Dan? Do you drink a lot?
one night a week.
One night a week you drink. Which night?
Thursday night.
Every Thursday night you drink, and you hit it pretty hard Thursday nights?
7 to 8 IPAs, but I'm 230 pounds, so it's not terrible.
How old are you?
43.
Well, you're a young man yet. Ever been married?
I am married and I have a 9-year-old. He's never actually seen me in that condition. I make sure of that.
So wait a minute. You just have a rule that you don't see your kid Thursday nights?
Well, it's not until he's in bed, 10 p.m. or so.
You don't start your drinking till after he's in bed? And then from 10 till about 3 in the morning, you hit her pretty hard.
That's about right. I usually play old Nintendo games in the basement after I run out of wood.
Otherwise, you're in the backyard around a fire?
Yes, sir. There's at least a couple neighbors that usually come.
At 2, 3 in the morning, a neighbor will be sitting with you?
One of them will. Now, he, on the other hand, may have an issue. He does that every day, and he hits it harder than me.
What's his first name?
Matt.
I'm going to call him Drunk Matt. When it's just you two, Drunk Matt and Drunk Dan, at the end of the night, 3 in the morning, backyard around the fire, anything magical happen there ever where you just really get into something that's real and deep, the kind of conversation that can only come from great friendship?
You can really only bond with someone over a few beers. That's how I got to know the neighbors.
So that sort of lets down the inhibitions, opens the doors, greases the skids.
I never would have found out a couple of the neighbors loved Pink Floyd just like me and old Guns N' Roses and things like that.
Is it a good life, Dan?
Oh, yeah.
You're happy with it?
Yep. I think my biggest fear is that I don't appreciate it because I imagine I'll be on my deathbed one day and I'll wish I could be back in these days, even when they're stressful.
So these might be the good old days right now?
I think so. I just don't appreciate it as much as I should.
You have a 9-year-old boy?
Yep.
These are the good old days, my friend. This is the moment right now. 9. This is what you don't want to lose right now. The old man and his boy. Don't mess this up. You got something else going on? You have an appointment for something else? You got to get together with some other people? Cancel. Just hang with the kid. You will one day remember these words, and you'll either say, I should have listened to Mischke, or you'll say, I'm glad I did.
No, man, you are a wise man. I've listened to you since I was probably 15 at my friend's house during sleepovers. I will listen to your words, absolutely. When
you're smiling and happy and hanging out with your boy as much as you can, you're going to say, God, good life. Good life. I hit the jackpot. This is a great life. I love my life.
Damn right.
All right. Yeah.
I will, man. I will.
I'm going to let you go, Drunk Dan.
Okay.
So long now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
This is quite a story, this one here. A toddler fell from the 15th story of an apartment building out in Maryland last week. A toddler, put that in your head right there, toddler, 2 years old we're talking, fell from 15 stories high. 2 years old, 15 stories high. Numbers matter. 2 is important here because you got to put this little tyke in your mind, and 15's important here. 15 stories. Happened in Maryland last week. The toddler survived. Wait, what? I'm not done. The toddler survived with nothing but a broken arm. He landed in some bushes on the ground, and the bushes saved his life. The bushes. Who planted the bushes? Let's give that guy something. A rescue crew rushed to the high-rise apartment. They arrived and discovered that somehow this 2-year-old boy's life was saved when he landed on bushes near the front door of this apartment building. Fire department said the boy came away from this terrifying balcony fall, still conscious, just struggling with a broken arm. They took care of that right away at the hospital. He's back home, hopefully with new parents. I don't know. I don't want to condemn them. Who knows what was going on there? We don't know. They're investigating. No arrests have been made. Other parents interviewed in the building said they're shocked, but they say they know children often play on these balconies. This apartment complex is filled with balconies. In fact, they say they often see people around those very bushes looking for things like cell phones and keys that kids have thrown over the edge of the balcony railing. These parents interviewed in the apartment building say the balcony railings are not low, but there are chairs out on the balcony, and a kid could climb onto a chair or something like that. As I mentioned, this incident is still being investigated. No criminal charges at this point. More importantly, most importantly, this child is fine. My favorite part is he's right-handed and he broke his left arm, so he can still write, scribble, whatever you do it to. Hopefully, pen a story for the local newspaper. I'd like to hear what it was like. Or write a poem for a local poetry journal describing this extraordinary experience. Come on, kid. What was it like? I was young, so very young, but not too young to climb a chair. There was a railing, one thin railing, and beyond that, only air. What was I doing? I was exploring. That's what you do when you're only 2. You move about. You look around. This strange world is so brand new. And what's up here? I want to look. What's out there? I want to see. I'm so high, and there's the sky, and I'm above every tree. I'm loving this. I'm feeling bliss to be so young and to explore. But something's changed. I feel the wind, and I don't feel the balcony anymore. And my stomach tickles. I'm like a bird. I'm feeling dizzy. I'm moving fast. I see the ground. I hear a scream. But I'm not here to breathe my last. The guy who planted all those bushes, did he maybe understand that they'd be pretty, but they'd be really where a toddler could softly land? Today I fell, but hey, what's new? Everyone falls when you're only 2. I'm okay, and I'm alive to say I just fell farther than most kids do. And when I grow up, I think I'll be the owner of a nursery. 'Cause I like bushes and shrubbery. And today I learned that they like me.